What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today I'm going to be showing you more than 120 new features and changes included in iOS 18. And keep in mind, this is only beta 1. We are going to see several additional features in the coming months, which I will be covering here on the channel, so make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on future iOS 18 videos. Okay, so let's get into it and we're going to start at the lock screen. Now throughout this video, I'm going to have iOS 17 on the left, iOS 18 on the right. So if we go to the lock screen and press and hold and go to customize and go to the lock screen, we have a couple of changes here. So first off, if you tap on the clock, we have a new gradient, so a new color gradient for the clock picker up there. And then also down here at the bottom, we have two new options to change the lock screen buttons. So you'll notice that the albums has been moved up along with the three dots has been moved up to make way for the lock screen customization. And these lock screen buttons you can change to be pretty much anything you want. So if you go to tap on the plus, you will get an interface here, kind of like a control center for the lock screen buttons. And you can see, you can scroll through all these different options and you can also search. So, what I like doing is the open app shortcut. So this is actually going to create a shortcut on the lock screen and it doesn't actually show up in the shortcuts application. So it's only used for these lock screen shortcuts here. And I've noticed that it is pretty buggy in beta 1. So you do have to add it and then go back in there and tap on it. And then you can choose an application that you want it to open up. So if I want to open up X from the lock screen, I can just simply tap that. And now I can open that and we can tap on done, go back, and you can see I have the option to open up X or messages straight from my lock screen. So let's try it out. Tap and hold, and there we go. We just opened it up from the lock screen, which I think is pretty neat. And you might have noticed this wallpaper here. This is the new iOS 18 wallpaper. So we do have a few different variations. So you can see we have these 4 different colors for the iOS 18 official wallpaper. I think it looks pretty good. You do also have a dark mode where you can set it and you can see how that looks in dark mode. Okay, so now let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about the home screen because as you can tell right away, there is a big difference between iOS 17 and iOS 18. And starting off with the color of the icons, that's probably the first thing you noticed is the dark theme on the icons, and that is something brand new in iOS 18. So if you tap and hold, you will notice that up top, instead of just having the plus icon like we had on iOS 17, we now have an edit text right there. So now if we tap on edit, we have the option to add a widget or customize. So we do also have 2 new glyph icons right there next to the widget and the customize text. So if we go to customize, this is where we get the option to change the look of our icons. So for instance, if I go to light mode, it's going to change the icons back to what we're used to. And then we also have tinted right here where you can change the color of the icons to really whatever color you want. You even have a picker here where you can choose a specific color on your wallpaper. So if I want them to be green like that, I can do that. I can also lower the saturation, and you can change that. Sometimes it will go out of there. It's a little bit buggy right now, but you can see that you can change like the overall saturation of that color as well. We even have this little sun up in the top left. If you tap on that, that will darken the wallpaper a little bit more. So if you want to darken any custom wallpaper you have, you can do that. And then we also have large, so you can make the app icons large, which these actually look pretty cool because it gets rid of the app icon underneath, but they are a bit too big for me, but I do think that is pretty cool if you do want the large icons on the home screen. And then of course we do have automatic as well, which is based on your system theme. But I am sticking with the dark icons permanently. I think that is the best look on iOS 18, no matter what your wallpaper is. And you'll also notice that we can move our app icons anywhere we want. Well, almost anywhere we want. So you can see I could put this one up here, and I could put this one even up higher, and you can see we have this different layout now that we've never been able to do before on iOS. So you still have to stick to one of the 4, grid spots. So there are 4 grid spots. So you do still have to stick to one of those spots, but you can place icons without moving every other icon along with it. So now you can have empty space up here without the need for a blank widget. We do also have a couple of minor changes to the app icons. So the weather app icon looks a little bit different. The bottom of the cloud is a little bit less opaque than it was previously. And then also for the calculator, we have a difference in the app icon there as well. So you can see on iOS 17 in the bottom left, it had a long rectangular like circle down there, whereas in iOS 18, they're all the little circles. It just looks a bit different. And you might have also noticed on the home screen that we have a passwords application. That is a brand new application in iOS 18, and this is essentially the same thing as the iCloud keychain that we had in settings beforehand, but now it is its own standalone application, and it's much better organized for keeping track of all your keychain passwords, your pass keys, your Wi-Fi passwords, your two-factor authentication codes. All of that is in here, which is really nice. And what's really cool is if you go into Wi-Fi and you go into one of your Wi-Fi networks that you connected to, you have the option to show network QR code, so you can scan that to get into the Wi-Fi network. So a feature I have been waiting on for at least the past 5 years is finally here with iOS 18, and that is locking applications with Face ID. So if I go to Instagram, for example, and I haptic press on that and I go to require Face ID, you can see that I can not only require Face ID to get into the application, but I can also hide and require Face ID. So if I go to hide and require, I put in my Face ID, you can see you will get a prompt that says it is obscured, the app icon and name are obscured, and also you will not get any notifications or calls unless you scan your Face ID. So if we go to hide app, you can see it disappears from my home screen and it just ceases to exist on my device unless I unlock it. Now, if I go over to my app library and then go down, you will see in the bottom right, we have a new hidden folder. And if we tap on that, we put in our Face ID and you can see the applications that we've hidden. And you'll also notice the app library in general has a different look as well. So it used to be blurred, the background used to be blurred, but now in iOS 18, it is not. It is just your regular wallpaper. Oh, and something else I just realized is that Parallax icons are back. So this might be hard to tell on the screen right now. I'm gonna put a screen recording up to the right of me right here, but we have Parallax icons on iOS 18. So if you're not a fan of Parallax, that effect, I know some people, it does not do well for them. You can turn that off if you go into your accessibility settings and then down to motion and reduce motion. So you might want to turn reduce motion on if you do not want the parallax effect of icons. Also new in iOS 18 is the ability to change the size of widgets on the fly without having to delete the widget and re-add it. So if I go into jiggle mode, you can see on iOS 18, we have this little grabber in the bottom right-hand corner, and we can just change the size of this based on what we want it to be. So if you want it to be the rectangle, you can see it looks like that. If you want it to be the square, you can push it over and it looks like that. And you can even make this into an app icon. So if I go to done and then I tap and hold, you will notice that we have a new section here under edit widgets where you can change the size this way as well. So if you're not in jiggle mode, you can change the size just from tapping and holding, and you can even turn it into its own app icon. So you can see I have two weather app icons up there now, but I can expand one of those into a widget just like that. Also new in iOS 18 is a completely redesigned control center. So this is what the control center looked like in iOS 17. Here's what it looks like in iOS 18. Massive difference in pretty much every aspect. So let's break this down. So first off, you will notice up in the top left-hand corner, we have a plus. And when you tap on that plus, this allows you to add a control center toggle from the control center itself. You no longer need to go into settings to add a control. So you can just tap add control, and you have all of these different options to choose from if you want to add this into the control center. And this will also be opened up to developers via the API, and you will be able to have third-party applications have different actions and toggles in the control center in the future as well. So you could add any of those in there, which is super cool. You can also resize these, just like we talked about with the widgets. So if you wanted to resize this right here, you can resize the music little player there, and you can control pretty much the size of all of these except for the volume, the brightness, and focus modes. Everything else can be resized. You can even resize the app icons here, the little toggles down here at the bottom. So it's kind of finicky because it is in beta, but you can kind of get the gist of how that works. And you do have these little empty slots here if you want to add them and move them around. Now you'll notice that I have a second page of icons here. So you can have multiple pages of icons here in the control center. Now, if you want to move these from page to page, you can do that. You can tap on it right here and then tap on the favorites So this is considered the favorites right here, and then you can move it into that section. So if I go back down to here and I want to move this, so let's put that back to being small, and I go to the favorites, I can move this onto this page very easily. So now if we tap into here, it is empty. And then if we go down once again, that is our dedicated music player. Now you can also add a control here as well. So if you want to add on to this, you can do that there as well. And then we have HomeKit, and you could add on to the HomeKit section as well if you would like. And then down here we have our connectivity platter, where it's all of our, airplane mode, AirDrop, Wi-Fi, all of that. And then also an additional section down here as well. You can go ahead and swipe through these if you want as well. So let me get out of the jiggle mode. So if you tap and hold, you can go through these very quickly by tapping and holding over here on this right-hand navigation section. So it's very, very different. It does take some time to get used to, but I'm a fan of it. I don't know how I feel about these circular icons, but it is a big change that I'm just glad to see some type of change to the control center. Now you'll also notice up in the top right-hand corner, we do have a power icon. If you tap on that, that will just bring you to the slide to power off. There's no reset button. It's just to slide to power off. But yeah, everything pretty much has changed here. You can access the controls here as well. If you want the connectivity controls, you don't have to go to the section down here, but that is, something you can change. So super cool, super different. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Now you might have noticed in the control center, we have a music haptics button down there, and that is a new accessibility feature in iOS 18 that allows you to feel the haptics that kind of go to the beat of music. So if you go into your settings and go to accessibility, you'll notice that it just disappeared there. That's a little bug. You do have to go out of settings and then go back into it and then search for it. And in there you have a toggle to turn this on or off. It is off by default. And then if you go into music and you start playing music, you will notice that you can feel the haptic vibrations that go to the beat, even if the song is turned all the way down and on mute. And you can see we have a little icon there, and this is what you see on the lock screen. You can see the little icon there that shows that we do have haptics turned on. And you could also turn it off by just simply tapping on it. And I will say that the haptics are pretty strong. I did not expect them to be as strong as they are. So it's pretty nice. And I think it's pretty cool if you can't hear, but you still want to feel the beat of the music. That is a great way to do so. But that's not the only accessibility feature I found interesting in iOS 18. We also have eye tracking. So if you go down here under accessibility, we have a purple icon for eye tracking, and this allows you to control your iPhone with just your eyes. Now it's not as smooth as the Apple Vision Pro, of course, but it is pretty interesting, and it's actually pretty accurate for being a first beta. Okay, so I just set this up, and you can see I'm kind of controlling everything with my eyes right now. So everything you see me selecting, that little black ball that's going around, is where my eyes are on the screen right now. So it's not super accurate because of the way I'm holding my phone. It wasn't the exact way that I tracked my eyes in the beginning, but if you select something, if you just kind of hold there for long enough, it will select it. If you keep staring at something, it will select it, and you can kind of maneuver through iOS with just your eyes, which is pretty awesome. Another very interesting accessibility feature is vehicle motion cues. And this is for people who have motion sickness. If you get motion sick in a car or a boat, this could help you. And this is actually in the control center right here, but this is also in the accessibility settings, but I just added it to my control center. And you have the option to turn this on, off, or only in vehicle. So we're gonna turn this on for now just so you can see how it works, and take a look at the right and the left of my screen. It's going to use those little balls, those little dots, to detect the motion of what I'm seeing on the screen, of what direction everything is going on the screen. So this is, just to kind of help with motion sickness. If I move it fast, you will notice that those little dots move. And then also under accessibility, we have vocal shortcuts. So you can teach your iPhone to recognize a custom phrase that you can say to quickly perform an action. So that is new in iOS 18, which will be very beneficial for a lot of people. And then we also have another feature in iOS 18 called sound actions. And then the final thing I wanted to mention with accessibility is in the audio and visual section and under background sounds. And then under sound, we have two new background sounds. We have night and Fire. So neither one of these are able to be used at the moment, but they are new in iOS 18. We also have a change to the flashlight dynamic island. So you'll notice that when you turn the flashlight on from the control center, you'll notice that on the left is what we had on iOS 17. It was just the flashlight up there in the dynamic island. Really the only thing you could do is tap to turn it off, and that was it. You couldn't really do much more. But now in iOS 18, you have this really long kind of, animation, this really long little sequence going on here with the flashlight. And you can not only turn the intensity up, so you can change the intensity and you can see the animation kind of moving along with the intensity here, but you can also change the width, kind of like the beam. So if you want to focus the beam in a certain direction, like if you want to really narrow down the beam, you can do that as well. So the UX is really bad here. It's really hard to determine how to do this properly, but you can move it wide and you can move it up. So you can see it's basically just focusing that beam of light onto a direct subject, or if you wanted to have the beam like really wide, but maybe not as directly bright on a certain subject, you can do that. And then of course, again, you can increase the intensity of the brightness of the flashlight, which is pretty cool that Apple is able to do this with just software. And take a look at that animation coming down again. So really smooth animation, and you can tap on that flashlight to turn it off and then turn it on, and you can see that really smooth animation there. I love that. Speaking of the dynamic island, we also finally get the stopwatch dynamic island back in iOS 18. So this appeared briefly in an iOS 17 beta, but now it is officially here on iOS 18. So you can see it up there. You can haptic press and see it as well. And you'll notice if you look up in the right side, you can see like the milliseconds over there as well. So pretty cool animation as well to go with iOS 18 for the dynamic island. And another animation that I absolutely love in iOS 18 is for the volume buttons and the power button. So take a look on the left-hand side when I turn the volume up or down. You see that very subtle, kind of like I'm pushing in on the screen every time I press a physical button. And it's the same with the action button. If I press the action button, you can see that little part of the screen kind of pops out. Same with the power button as well. If I tap that power button, you can see that that pops out. If I take a screenshot, both pop out at the same time. So I don't know what it is about this animation, but it is so satisfying. In the Messages application, we have new tap-back reactions that are now redesigned to be a lot more colorful. So they used to be that dark gray, but now we have color. And you'll notice that we can also have emojis as reactions. So we can now react to messages with emojis or even a sticker. So you can see this little plus with the smiley face. If you tap on that, you can select any of your emojis down here or any stickers that you have. So if we go over here to our stickers, we can use that as a tap back reaction now on that message. But say we want to do an emoji, we can do that and you can see what it looks like right there. So that is nice. That's going to add a lot more flexibility to the Messages application. It makes it feel a lot more like WhatsApp or like a social media application. And to take that a step further, we also have text effects. So if I start typing in, let's just say I say happy birthday, for example. If I type that in and I wanted to, let me say old man, maybe I'm talking to a friend and I want to say happy birthday, old man, but I want the old man to have an effect on it. I can highlight that and go to text effects, and that pulls up this new tray down here at the bottom. And now I can add an effect to that specific word. So we're going to select the big animation here. And if we go ahead and send that, you will see that only the old man is what pops up with that effect, which is super cool. Now we also have other things you could do here. So if you tap on that, and you'll notice that we always have this little A over here. That is how you can access these new features in the Messages application. Just tap on that A right there, and you will also notice that we can mark up the text inside of iMessage. So you can now make text bold, you can italicize text, you can underline text, and you can also strike through text. So all of that now works within iMessage. So if I type in happy and then birthday, you can see that only the happy is bold. And I can also make this, maybe I want to do this italicized. So now that's how it looks. And the person, as long as they're on iOS 18, will also see it that way. Now, since we're on the topic of happy birthdays, we can also schedule a message. So if you forget to tell somebody happy birthday all the time and you know their birthday is coming up, you can schedule an iMessage to send on a certain day and at a certain time up to 2 weeks in in advance. So if I type in happy birthday again, since we're on that topic, and we tap on the plus over here on the left and then swipe down, we have a new option here for send later. And if you tap on that, you get this UI right here where you have a date picker at the bottom where you can choose a specific date. So let's say it's Friday, June 21st, and I want to send this at around 2:30 p.m. So we can go ahead and select 2:30 p.m. and you'll see the UI shows right there. And now we can just tap on send and it will be scheduled now. So you can see that we now have 2 scheduled messages. So I had one from earlier, but when you have a scheduled message, you can edit them. So you can tap on edit, and from here, you can either send it right away, or you can edit the time, or you can just delete the message overall. And you can see you can have more than one scheduled message at a time. This update also brings SMS via satellite. So if you're off the grid and you don't have signal, but you need to contact emergency services, you can now do that via text instead of just through phone call like before on iOS. So you can see here, I'm going to test my satellite connection, and you'll notice that we also have a new little UI here as well for this demo once it ends. So I'm going to end this prematurely, and you'll notice that this section is new as well. So this is a really slick looking little settings pane here inside of the settings application when you do the satellite test. And you'll see right there that we have messages, send and receive messages via satellite. And then iOS 18 will also bring RCS support, but it's not live just yet. So you could actually see some remnants of this in iOS 18 beta 1 if you start composing a message to a non-iPhone user. So it will say, now it says text message, and then it says SMS after that, whereas before it would only say text message. So that's kind of an indicator as well that RCS is coming. Also in the phone application, we finally have T9 dialing. So if you start typing in a phone number, you will see the suggestions down here, and you can see they update in real time as you keep dialing. So there's only 10 left. And now if I type that in, the only one left is Apple, and you can tap on that and it will put in the phone number right there for you. And you'll notice if it's not the full phone number, you can add as a contact right up here in the top left now, whereas before you had to tap on add number beneath. When you tapped on that, that's where you got the pop out for create new contact or add to existing. And you'll also notice that we have new glyph icons there as well. So it's now create new contact with a plus, and the existing contact is like a driver's license, whereas they both look very similar in iOS 17 to each other. We have a couple of changes in Safari in iOS 18. So you'll notice that in the address bar here to the left, it used to be these 2 A's. Now it's a new symbol right there. And if you tap and hold on that, that will put you into reader mode. And if you tap right there, you will get different options. So the UI looks a bit different. It's not as compact and small as it was beforehand. You have the different font options here and the different colors here as well. And you can see the listen to page and hide reader are now horizontal instead of vertical. Oh, and you also have the option to find on page down here in the bottom left-hand corner in that section. But easily one of my favorite features in iOS 18 is highlights. So what this does is it basically gives you a summary of what's in Safari, or it can actually give you directions and an easy way to call somebody if you're on a website like this, for example. So I'm at the Omni Dallas Hotel. I want to know the address, or I want to know a phone number where I can call them very quickly, but you can see there's not really anything that's very obvious to me. I don't see a phone number. I don't see an address anywhere unless I keep scrolling. But if you take a look here in the address bar, we have a little purple little sparkle there. If you tap on that, take a look at what pops up here up top. I have a very easy Apple Maps-like interface that shows the phone number I can call with one tap, and I can go with one tap in the Maps application, and also it shows me the exact hotel and the surroundings along with the percentage and everything. So that right there is going to save a lot of time. And here's what the highlights feature looks like when you first download iOS 18. By the way, you do have to turn this on from the settings, and it says highlights. Safari intelligently displays summaries, previews, and suggestions from the web, nearby locations, and more. The tab icons look much better than they did in iOS 17, so they're more modern. They don't really have the shapes anymore. They're kind of just flat. And then also down here in the middle, we no longer have the personal tab group glyph icon showing down there. It's just these 3 lines. And then if we go over to the private section, you can see this has a minor change as well. So we now have a glyph icon with the hand, and it just says private browsing instead of private browsing mode. It's also not as dark and as bold as it was previously. iOS 18 also updates the music application with nothing really too flashy, but some pretty important changes related to the queue. So if you go into the queue for music, you will notice first off that the shuffle, repeat, and autoplay icons have been revamped. So they're now in the top middle and they're much bigger, easier to press. And then also you can see that it's no longer considered playing next. It's now called the queue. We always called it the queue, but Apple officially calls it the queue now instead of playing next. And then more importantly, you can see that we can now clear the queue. So before you could only clear the history, the stuff that you were playing beforehand, but now in iOS 18, you can clear the queue for all the songs that you have yet to be played. So you can clear that, and also the overall queuing in general has been fixed, because now when you have songs in the queue and you select a song to play later, so like if I go into here and I want to play this song later, if I would go to add to queue, which adds it to the end, and now puts that song at the end of the other songs that you've already queued instead of at the very, very end. I hope that makes sense. If you use Apple Music, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Also, for the first time in forever, Apple finally updated the AirPlay platter. So it's looked like this on iOS 17 forever, and now it finally looks a bit different. It's still very similar, but you can see it's more rounded now. It's not as dark as before, so it's less opaque. And we also have a really big and thick underline right there, a very thick line that goes above the different audio sources that you have in your house. I'm not sure why that's so thick. Now we have a really cool feature coming for the AirPods Pro 2nd generation called Siri Interactions. So with iOS 18 and the latest beta for the AirPods Pro 2, you can now nod your head yes or shake your head no to respond to Siri announcements like answering a phone call. So you guys know if you get a phone call with your AirPods in, it will say, do you want to answer this? And typically you have to say yes or no, but now with iOS 18, you can just nod your head yes or shake your head no, and it will respond accordingly. And then also in iOS 18, we have improved voice isolation. So voice isolation was there before, but now it's apparently much better with iOS 18 and the latest version of the AirPods firmware. Also, when you go to change your mic mode and your video effects, this section in the control center has been completely revamped. So in iOS 17, this is what it looked like. We had these two big blocks up top. You had video effects, and if you tap and hold on that, that's where you can change the video effects when you're on FaceTime. And then mic mode, when you're on phone calls or on your AirPods, that's where you can change it right there. And here's what it looks like in iOS 18. So you have these two little animations here on the left-hand side, and you can see you can change both at the same time. Your photos or your camera down here on the bottom, and your audio right here on the top. So it looks much better than it did in iOS 17, and you can access that by tapping up top there when prompted. And then Apple also mentions that personalized spatial audio with head tracking is now available for gaming as well with the AirPods. The Photos application gets a complete revamp, a complete overhaul in iOS 18, and this one's going to take quite a bit of time to get used to because pretty much everything has changed. So first off, you will notice that we no longer have the tabs at the bottom. This whole UI is kind of like a single page UI. So everything is basically all on one page. So there are several differences here, so I'm not even going to have iOS 17 up because you will know the differences right away. So first off, we have our library here with all of our photos. And one thing that instantly stood out to me that I liked is if you go to this little up and down arrow right here, if you tap on that, you can see under View Options, you have the ability to hide screenshots. So if you only wanted to see photos that were not screenshots, if you're like me and you take a ton of screenshots, you can hide those by simply deselecting that. And now it's only going to show actual photos and videos and not all of your screenshots. And then you also have the option to filter here as well. So you can filter by your favorites, your edited, your photos, video, screenshots, all of that you can do right here as well. And then right up here up top, we have some changes as well. So we have a search bar. If you tap on search, this is a completely new design that shows recently viewed, recently edited, and recently shared up top, along with prompts that are based on people that are actually in your people and pets album, along with locations and things that you were actually doing that you might want to search for. So if I search, for example, for kayaking with Brandon, it's going to show me literally me kayaking. And this whole UI, as you can tell, is completely new in iOS 18. And it's just pretty awesome. Like, you can put some pretty, specific things in here and it will show you those results better than it ever did before. And if you tap on your profile picture up in the top right-hand corner, here's where you can see a lot of different information as well. So you can see your total amount of photos and videos. It shows your syncing right there. It shows if you want to show in main view hidden album or not, and then also shared albums. You can scroll down, you can see different library view options. You can see what's shared with you. You have all these different options here in this section. And then, like I mentioned, this is like a one-page design. So if you swipe down from here, you will see that first off, before we go anywhere down here to recent days, you will notice that we have some little buttons right here. So we have the ability to go over left and right. So if you go over to videos, you can see your favorites, you can see your featured photos, you can see all of those right here. You can also tap on customize, so you can customize what you kind of scroll through when you swipe from left to right. So if you want to disable one of these collections or add a collection, you can do that right here. And then below that, we have recent days where you can see different days and different things that you had going on during that specific day. We have trips, which is really cool because it's going to take different times that you were, out of town when it knows that you're out of town. And it's going to put together a little collage of photos and videos from that time when you were out of town on a trip. So it's going to be really good at kind of just giving you really good memories now. That's really the thing that photos in iOS 18 does. It's going to really help you get the most out of the photos that you take in a specific area or on a specific day. And then if you go down to the bottom here, this is also pretty interesting. So if you go to utilities, so we've always had utilities before in the Photos app, but there are more in iOS 18. So you can see that we have things like, handwriting. We have receipts, for example. So if you want to see your receipts, you can tap on that and it will show you all of the receipts that are in your photo library. And you have all of those right here. Now, if we go into individual photos, there are several changes here as well. So starting up top, you can see that the location, if you have the location for a photo, it now shows in the top left. It's bold and it's also aligned with the date below it. Before, the date was centered underneath of the text and it was all in the middle. Now it is to the left. There is no back button. There's also no edit button. And we have an X up in the top right, which will X out of the photos. You no longer have to swipe down to X out of a photo. We finally have an X in individual photos. You can see that the shared library icon right here is also different. So it's a little bit lighter and smaller than it was in iOS 17. And then going down to the bottom, we have several changes here as well. So the share sheet in the bottom left now has a circular look to it. You can see that in the middle, the favorite, information, and edit buttons are all together in the middle. And again, we have that more circular design for the trash to delete the photo. So instead of having to reach across the whole screen and tap on edit to edit a photo like we had to do in iOS 17, it's now very easy to do because it's just down here with a simple press of your thumb down at the bottom, and now you're in the edit mode. And you'll notice a few differences here as well. So first off, we no longer have a dark mode. So before, no matter what your device was in, whether it was in light mode or dark mode, the top and bottom of this edit section were dark, but now they are light in iOS 18. Also down at the bottom, you'll notice that the icons look a bit different because of that white mode. Now, if you go into crop, there's a slight change here as well, and you'll notice it up in the top right corner. So we have that unlock button, and what that is locking in the aspect ratio. So if we tap on lock, I believe it's on lock to begin with, like as default. This locks the aspect ratio, but you can't go ahead and unlock it to be able to crop it however you want, even though it's not within, the aspect ratio of the photo. And then coming later this year with Apple Intelligence, you will be able to remove items and people from the background, but that is not here just yet in beta 1. And if you go into a video, you'll notice that the video player looks different as well. So now in iOS 18, we have a very similar look to the native video player. At least the scrubber here looks different than it did in iOS 17. We also have an easier access, an easier press of a button for the mute button. So before that was down here, again, you had to reach across the screen, but now it's just within a thumb's length. The calendar application gets a major update in iOS 18 because it now syncs with reminders. So we'll get to that in a moment, but you can see that even just the UI looks way different and way better in iOS 18. So you can see the month is now up in the top left and it's bold instead of being in the top right and being red, and it didn't really stand out much. Also, the width of the overall calendar looks different. So the days don't look as jumbled up as they did in iOS 17. Up in the top right, we used to have this little rectangle with the two lines underneath of it to show the different events. And you just kind of had that look right there. But now in iOS 18, when you tap on that, you have options. So you have a menu now for compact, stacked, or details. And you could also do a list view as well. So compact, it goes back pretty similar to how it was in iOS 17. It's still a bit different. It's still bigger and the dates are still a bit bolder, but that is not my favorite view. I think the best view is either the stacked view or even the details view, where you can see a lot going on here. And this is what the list view looks like, but I like the stacked view personally. Now you can also zoom and pinch to create more space on the calendar. This is a kind of a hidden feature that I have not seen anybody else talk about, but you can pinch here and you get haptic feedback when you're pinching to create more room between the weeks. So you can kind of expand the details of those events. And even the today view is different as well. So if you tap on today in at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see that the date is now separated from the top navigation area. And also we have the more bold and just better aligned times on the left-hand side where it shows the time of day. And then when you go to create a new event, there's a slight change here as well. So it now says new instead of saying new event. And that's because you can now add reminders as well in the calendar application. Again, the two applications sync together, but also that top menu bar is a little bit different because you can select between these two. Okay, so now let's talk about those reminders, because if we go into a reminder here, we have get bananas today at 12 a.m. You can see the list it's in. You can even show in reminders. And if you tap on edit, it's going to show you the same interface that you get in reminders, except for it's in the calendar application still. So you can change everything that you can normally change in reminders straight from the calendar application. You can even add an image. So that is great. That is going to be great for productivity, and you can complete it from here as well. If you tap, that will complete the reminder that is inside of the calendar application, and it shows it complete and it's now grayed out. So in the reminders application, it looks kind of the same at first glance, but there are a few differences here. So now you can have subtasks for reminders in a smart list. So if we go down to a smart list, so for the get bananas reminder, we have a subtask and it's now all the way over to the right, whereas before it was further in to the left, and it's also blue now. And that's because you can see that from the smart list. So now if we tap on that, it will show get bananas, it will highlight it there, and then we can see the subtask that is make sure they're organic. Before, if you wanted to access that, you had to go to the reminder and tap on the eye and then go down here to subtasks, and that's where you would see the subtask for make sure they're organic. So a big difference there for subtasks inside of smart lists. Also at the bottom, we now have a recently deleted folder. So you can go into there and see all of your recently deleted reminders. Also in iOS 18 is the biggest update to the calculator ever. And no, I'm not talking about it finally coming to iPad with iPadOS 18. I'm talking about several additional features here. So first off, just the UI even looks a bit different. So the AC, you can see now have this darker gray color, whereas before they had a lighter gray color. The times, minus, plus, equals, all of those are less bold now than they were before. Actually, every character on the keyboard is a bit less bold than it was in iOS 17. And then if we start typing in some numbers, the text is now more bold and it's smaller than it was in iOS 17. And if we go ahead and continue with this, take a look at this. We can actually see exactly what we are writing out as the equation, whereas before it would erase everything that you typed beforehand. So if I wanted to do the same thing in iOS 17, if I type in 63, I can no longer see the 56. And if I press on equals, it shows the equation up top that led to that result. Now you might have also noticed that you have a backspace button for the first time ever. So before you just had to clear all. Now there was a hidden backspace in iOS 17 where you just swipe over, but that was kind of hidden and nobody really knew about that. Now in iOS 18, you actually have a backspace button, which is nice. But that is not everything. There is a lot more to the calculator application. So if you tap on this calculator icon in the bottom left-hand corner, we have multiple options here. So first off, let me talk about convert. So it's now easy to convert. I know you can do this in the spotlight search, but it is nice to have this inside of the calculator application. So it's an easy, instant conversion to different currencies or anything else. And you can swap them just like that. And you can choose between the different ones here. So you have angle, area, data, energy, force. You have so many different types of, things that you can convert. So even BTU, horsepower, all of that. So if I wanted to convert horsepower to something else, kilowatts, for example, you can see that 850 horsepower equals 633 kilowatts. We even have a scientific calculator, so you can now get all of your functions that you can do, like sine, cosine, tangent, all of that you can do now from the default calculator application, which is awesome. I wish I had this back in the day, so I didn't need to buy that $100 calculator. And then if you tap again, we have math notes, which to me is the most impressive out of anything in the calculator application. So from here, it's going to open up a notes-like interface, and that's because this relies on the notes application. So if you tap to create a new note, you can either type out an equation. So if I just type in like 758 times 65, you can see that it will automatically pull in like what that equals before I even finish typing it out. Sometimes you will have to press on equals for it to show up the result, and you get that cool little animation, but it will show it automatically. But in my opinion, the coolest part is when you actually draw the math itself. So this works better on the iPad with the Apple Pencil, but if you tap on the markup here, okay, so we have 7 times 9 plus 1 minus 6 times 12. Now it's going to invoke the equation. It's going to solve the equation once you type in or once you draw an equal sign. So we're going to put an equal sign right here, and it's going to detect that, and it's going to give us the answer to the equation. If it's too big, you can make this smaller. That way it's able to put in the equation. So that is equal to -8, and it even puts it in my handwriting. And what's really cool is this math notes feature can even insert a graph for you based on an equation that you type out. So I put in y equals 2x plus 1, and we get a prompt to automatically insert a graph. And if we tap on that, it will insert the graph of that equation right there, which is insane that it did that just from me drawing out an equation with my finger. Speaking of the notes application, we have several other changes here as well. So one of the big ones is audio note transcription. So if you tap on the little clipboard here, we have a new option to record audio. So you can now record audio directly in a note. You no longer have to go into voice memos. Now from here, you want to select this down in the bottom left-hand corner to transcribe everything that you are saying. So if you press record, it will start recording what you're saying, and it will automatically transcribe everything you're saying into text so you can reference it later. So if we pause that, and we go to done, it will now show up like this. It will be like an embed inside of notes. And if you tap on that, it will show you the transcript when you tap on the little annotate button down in the bottom left-hand corner. So this is great for taking notes if you're maybe on a walk or something like that. There's also new highlight text color. So if you tap on the 2 A's right here, you'll notice that over here, we can now highlight text in different colors. So we have purple, pink, orange, mint, blue. We have all of those right there. So if I go to mint, it's going to highlight that text in that mint color. And if you change this text to a header, so if we go to format and then to heading right here, it will make a collapsible header. So if you go back and you can see right here that we now have collapsible header. So if you tap on that, it will collapse everything that is underneath of it. So we have this is cool down there. That is now collapsible. It will be hidden underneath of this header. So that makes for great note-taking and more organized note-taking. There's a new game mode. So when you go into a game, you will see that game mode automatically turns on. You can turn it off if you would like to, but it is on automatically. And if you go into the control center and tap up top, you will see the prompt for game mode. And it says when game mode is on, background activity is paused to optimize the performance of this game. So similar to what we've seen on macOS. And by the way, just like with macOS, this does also improve the latency with connected AirPods and Bluetooth controllers. We have a couple of changes in the wallet application. So we now have a feature called Tap to Cash, where you can put 2 devices together and pay for something, kind of like we had with Name Drop, where you can share contact information. You can now do that with 2 two phones to pay somebody with Apple Cash. So it's called Tap to Cash, and you could also have it set to not show your last name or photo if you don't want it to, if it's going to be with somebody that you don't necessarily know. And you'll also see a prompt for that if you go to send or request right here. There's an option for Tap to Cash. There's also an option to do that inside of the control center. So if you go to add a control, there is an option for Tap to Cash. If you search for it, you'll see it is right there. You can also now redeem rewards and access installments from an eligible credit or debit card. And then also tickets in the Apple Wallet have a new UI, so it now shows stadium details, recommended Apple Music playlists, and more. The settings application got several updates with iOS 18. This is the placement of items. So you'll notice that battery is very close to the top now. Before, battery used to be way down here. And then also underneath of that, we have general accessibility, which accessibility used to be way down as well. So that's reorganized. Camera is way higher than it used to be. So camera used to be way down here and it was really cumbersome to access, but now that is much higher. We have control center, everything, the more important things are now moved closer to the top. We also no longer have that very awkward section of just two applications. So App Store and Wallet, that no longer exists. You can see that is now down here under Wallet and Apple Pay with App Store and Game Center. And then also down there, you'll see that we now have an apps section. So before in iOS 17, you could just keep scrolling. If you had a lot of applications, you would just keep on scrolling through all those different application settings. But now it's separated and all those applications are in their own little section inside of settings. And it's very similar to the app library where you can sort it and organize by the name of the application, the starting letter. You could even search for the application up top. Oh, and also up top where we see our profile picture, you'll notice that now the text is bold. So my name is bold. And then underneath of that, it says Apple account, iCloud, and more. Whereas before it said Apple ID, iCloud Plus, media, and purchases. And if we go into that and then into the iCloud section, this looks completely different than it looked in iOS 17. So we have this really weird subscriber edition badge up in the top right, but you can see the storage is now a little bit more compact. It's just like a really small menu where you can tap into there to see the storage in more detail. And it has this really cool animation with the different applications that are using up your storage. But if we go back, save to iCloud, all of this looks completely different and much better than it looked in iOS 17. And one of my favorite changes is the iCloud backup. So it shows how long ago the backup was, and we have that little green right there if it is being backed up, whereas before you had to go into iCloud backup to see the last time that your phone was backed up, and you didn't have this cool little interface here. There's also a big change inside of the battery settings. So if you go inside of battery, before it said battery health and charging optimization, now it just says battery health and charging. So it just says charging instead of charging optimization. Now if you go into there, there's a pretty big change here as well. So before we only had the option to set an 80% limit, optimize battery charging, or none. But now we have a sliding scale where we can change the maximum charging, amount. So if you want to charge up to 95% or 90% instead of 80% or even 85%, you can do that right here with this slider. So you can just kind of slide along and select whatever you want the charging limit to be. So that is a much better interface, and it gives you a lot more flexibility with how much you charge your iPhone up. And also up top, you'll notice it says charging, and underneath of that, we have a new text, a new paragraph there with a learn more button. If you go to search inside of settings, we have a big change here as well. So it now shows search suggestions. So it shows different things that you might want to access inside of settings. And then also here we have recents. So it will show you the recent areas, the different sections that you've gone to recently inside of the settings application. So you can get back to there very easily. Also, if we go into a section like general, you will notice that up top we have a new header. So this makes it look a lot more modern in my opinion. It's a small detail, but it shows like what that section is about. And also we have glyph icons next to pretty much everything in here. Whereas before we had no glyph icons whatsoever. It was just all text right there. So it makes this whole section look a lot more alive. There's also a very interesting change inside of the privacy and security section inside of settings. So again, up top we have that header. Now take a look under location services. It's going to show how many applications are using that without you having to go into that section in settings altogether. So it says 1 is always sharing location services and 34 are while using. And it also shows that 2 applications have been allowed for tracking, whereas before before, you would not see that information unless you went into that section in settings. And it goes for everything down here as well. It gives you a preview of that beforehand. And then also down here, we have accessories, Bluetooth, local network, all of that is down here. Now, if we go into, let's just say contacts, for example, this is one where there's a big change as well. So if we go into contacts, we have this new interface where you can select to only share certain contacts with applications. So for example, Fantastical and Spark both have access to all of my contacts, but I might not want that. So you can go into here and reduce the access to, which contacts you want the Spark application or whatever application to have access to. The Apple Maps application gets a few changes. So it used to say favorites up in the top left. Now it says library. Also the home icon looks a bit different. And we also have an add button below that. And then underneath of that section, we have 15 places, 2 guides, and 0 routes. So that is a new section right there. And if we go into that, it will show our library. And then if we type in Sequoia National Park, for example, and we scroll down, you'll notice that we have a new section called Popular Hikes. So this is going to show us some of the popular hikes in US-based national parks. I'm sure this will come to other countries in the future, but right now it's just in the US. So if we wanted to go on, let's just say the Crescent Meadow hike, we can tap on that and it shows us this new interface and it shows us the route to take for that hike. You could also add it to your library for a later time. You could even add notes for that and download the route so it's on your phone even if you don't have signal. And then right underneath of that, we have a plan a hike section. So if you tap on plan a hike, this allows you to create a route for that specific area. So we're gonna have to zoom in on it. So if we zoom in and we tap on Crescent Meadow right there, it's going to set that as the starting point. And then we can select another area and you can see that it gives us different options for that route. So reverse, out and back, close loop. You can do all of that from here and you can save those routes. You could also change it on the fly or zoom in on that. So that is super cool and very, very handy. So if you just tap again, it will change the endpoint for that route. And iOS 18 also brings topographic maps to the iPhone, whereas before that was only on the Apple Watch. The health application finally allows us to rearrange pinned metrics. So first off, you'll notice up top, right underneath of summary, it now shows pinned. So we now have different pinned items. And if we tap on edit, it allows us to change what is pinned. So before in iOS 17, it was very cumbersome to have to find out what I favorited and keep going way down to find like sleep, for example. But now you can search in this list and you can also have all your pinned items up top and you can move those around very easily. If you wanted to add something in there like cycling distance, I could just tap on that and it will add that to my pinned section right here inside of the health summary. The medical ID has also been updated, so it shows like this now inside of the health application, and it also shows pregnancy data if you are pregnant. And there's also emergency SOS live video. So a first responder could request you to go live basically on your phone and send them live information, a live video, and you're able to do that with this new feature, which is crazy. I need to see that in action. The fitness application gets a new look, so it now looks a lot better than it did previously. So we have a focus on the activity rings up top, so it's now to the left and it's bigger, and the move, exercise, and stand are now over to the right. The step count, the step distance, all of that is its own section now with its own graph, whereas before it was just this standalone section and you had this little inline graph, but now it's its own, and you can see step count based on the day, week, month, or year. And if you go back, you could also basically treat these as like widgets. So if you tap and hold on one of these, you can hide it, or you can go to edit, and this allows you to choose basically like 2 different widgets for this summary view. So I don't want trainer tips, so I'm going to hide that, and now it is gone. But if I wanted to move something there, I can go to trends, for example. So if I tap and hold on this and go to edit, if I have a smaller version of that, which I don't for that, but maybe for awards, there's a smaller version. So let's see, there is. Okay, so we have this smaller version of awards, and we can tap that, and now that's gonna go in that section inside of summary. So much better. And also down here, we have edit summary and see all categories. And also when you go into jiggle mode in here, we do have an add button up in the top left, which will take you to this section where you can add different categories, sessions, trainer tips, all of that we talked about earlier shows up right here. And you could add that, again, very similar to widgets on the home screen. There's also a UI change in the Apple Fitness Plus section inside of fitness. And you can see up top, we now have the nav bar up here for you, explore, library, and search. So that's all new in Fitness Plus. The journal application gets some much needed updates with iOS 18. So right away, you'll notice underneath of journal, it shows the amount of entries this year, the amount of words written, and the days that you've journaled this year. So it's going to show that. And I think that is awesome because it's going to kind of encourage you to keep writing more when you can see the stats right there. Now, also, you'll notice that this is kind of categorized better. So now it shows yesterday, December 2023, November 2023. It just shows a better interface and organization on the main page. Also in the top right, you'll notice that we have a search button. So now if we tap on search, we can search different categories. We can search for reflections, text only, audio. You can search within the journal application. You can also now log your state of mind inside of the journal application. Also, this section right here is a little bit different as well. If you go to create a new journal entry, there's a slightly different interface here. So you have a title up top now, and then you can start writing below that. So before it was just all text-based, it was all like body format, but now you can have kind of a title and then the body text below that. You can also mark up the text now. So we have those two A's on the bottom left, whereas we never had that beforehand. And with that, you can change the format. So you can bold, italicize, underline, strike through. You can change the color. You can make lists. You can do all of that now straight from the journal application. Also, you can log your state of mind now straight from the journal application. So this is a feature that used to only be in health and also on the Apple Watch, but now you can rate your state of mind straight from here and have that basically inside of a journal entry. And if you go back to the home page of the journal, it's going to show your state of mind up top there as well. There's also new home screen widgets. So we have an easy way to add a new entry in 2 different sizes. And then you also have streaks. So it shows you how long you've been journaling for. So this is again, something that's more encouraging to get you to keep writing. If you can see that your last streak was 4 days, or if your current streak, is maybe a few days, it's going to encourage you to keep writing more in the journal. So you can also tap on new entry and it will take you straight into there and start a new journal entry. The weather application gets a few updates in iOS 18. So underneath of the current temperature, it shows the feels like temperature, and it shows it in that little blue color right there, and it doesn't show sunny anymore. It just shows the feels like instead. And if you go down to the feels like section, it has this new little sliding bar that shows that it feels like it's 6 degrees higher than the actual temperature. So it shows that in that little orange section there. The wind section has a different look. So now it shows wind, gusts, and direction all over here on the left-hand side. Before, it didn't show the exact direction of the wind, and also it never showed the miles per hour in the middle. So that has changed on the little compass there. And also just this format looks a lot better, whereas before it just showed the numbers really big and the text really small. Oh, and if we go into the feels like section, you'll notice that this has changed as well. So it now shows conditions up top, and that's because the actual and the feels like temperatures have been combined along with the chance of precipitation. So before that never showed, but now you can see that it shows the actual and the feels like along with the chance of precipitation, and that's all under a conditions section now. You can also now set home and work weather locations. So you have to do this inside of the Maps application. So now it's going to always show your home and work if they're in 2 different locations. Also in the action button settings, we have a new setting for controls to quickly access your favorite control. These are like the control center toggles that you can do right here. You can now trigger those from the action button press. And we also have a new built-in trigger for recognize music. So if you don't want to recognize music via Shazam from the control center, you can now do that from a press of the action button. In the home application, if you go into the settings and go to energy, there's a new section up top to connect your energy account. And this is going to allow you to connect to your actual energy company for specific usage data and statistics. And there's also guest access where you can grant guests control of select smart home accessories. Also, I'm seeing this home key and express mode for the first time. So I've had a home lock for a while, but I think this is a new feature in iOS 18. In the shortcuts application, we have some UI changes. So first off, up top, it now shows new shortcut in bold, whereas before it was kind of grayed out. And then also we have this new little interface here for actions, whereas before it was kind of hidden down here and it did not look nearly as good as it does now. So for example, if I wanted to find the open app shortcut, I can do that right there, and I can tap on it and I can search for more actions and just quickly go through and search for different actions that I want to add to the shortcuts. And then for CarPlay, your iMessage notifications now include contact photos. And then of course, one of the biggest changes coming in iOS 18 is Apple Intelligence. So this is going to be a new Siri. We're going to see new AI in most of Apple's first-party applications. We're going to see ChatGPT implementation. We're going to see a lot of additional changes in iOS 18, but those are not available just yet. So if you want to see what those look like on the iPhone, be sure to subscribe because I will be covering those Apple Intelligence features in depth here on the channel at a later date. But if you guys enjoyed this video of over 100 new features and changes in iOS 18, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to subscribe again for more iOS 18 coverage. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.